Welcome back to my channel. My name is Deonis Burton. I'm a fashion and portrait photographer based out of Miami, Florida. On today's episode of How I Got the Shot, we're going to be focused on a tennis editorial, which was literally one of my favorite shoots from 2024. I just released the edits and I want to talk to you guys about the session. On today's episode of How I Got the Shot, I'm going to start by showing you the BTS first, so you can see the lighting setup, you can see what we were doing on set, you can see just how I was interacting and some of the things I was dealing with. Then after that, I'm gonna take you guys into Capture One. You can see like the little basic adjustments that I made prior to switching over to Photoshop. And then we're gonna go over to Photoshop. So in Photoshop was where I was able to really do something special. And it's simple, but it had a lot of impact on the final look of the images. For image number one, and pretty much every image that I shot this day, it was using natural light. I used a 6-foot reflector to bounce back when needed, but primarily depending on the sun for my lighting. For this image, you can see I'm moving the tennis balls around because I want to get this like sporadic feel as if she just finished a long session, and it gives you even more context to what's going on. From there, I adjusted my angle when I was shooting. I tend to shoot very low and up at my subject to make them look a lot bigger. So as you can see here, she's posing. We got the sun coming in strong. And then you'll slowly see the reflector pop in. And that pop in helped to balance out the shot a lot. So I'm at a low angle on the subject and I'm testing my shots out now. They're coming into Capture One. And then you're gonna see the reflector pop in. And when the reflector pops in, boom, that's beautiful. It's just a very even light. I didn't need to use my strobes even though I wanted to, but I'm very happy with what I got. And I'll put my camera settings at the end of this. So right before we transition to the second image. She did an amazing job with posing. She's not the kind of person you have to give a ton of direction to. It's just more you need to make sure you got your stuff correct. Like on these shots, I need to fix my orientation. And that's pretty much it for that shot. Let's go to the second one. So in image number two, we're in the same location. Similar setup. The only thing I needed to do was to make sure I adjusted my angle to her. I know in the last one I said I like to shoot down or shoot from a super low angle up in my subject, but in these it made more sense to just be straight on with her. And again, didn't need to give her a lot of direction, really just went with the flow. And then I just made sure the reflector was hitting her in the right place.
That way, I'm trying to get you lined up right there.
So in this instance, I'm trying to get her lined up with that middle line in the center of the court. I'm really big on symmetry. I know that has something to do with my background in engineering, but for me, it's so aesthetically pleasing when things are symmetrical. So once I got her in the right spot, I made sure my orientation made sense. She was in focus and the reflector was hitting her directly in the face. So as you can see in some of the B tests, the angle of the reflector changed a little bit, and that had everything to do with the position of the sun. One of the great things about working with a model who knows what they're doing, it's a lot quicker to get the shots. It doesn't take you forever to figure out what you need to do and how to get there. Now, I have a habit too. Once I know we've got the safe shot or we got the main shot that we were going for in the mood board, I like to continue moving around in the sense of like trying more things just to make sure there's not another variation that we'll love. And so that's what we're doing here. And she's doing an amazing job. Literally just like, it seems simple, but her posing just makes so much sense for what we're going for. In addition to the fact that she really studied the mood board, so she knew exactly what we were trying to accomplish. And here you can see me adjusting again to get a better angle. Composition always matters. And there's the win. There's that win we were talking about, but I was talking about earlier that actually almost took my Profoto D1 and B1X from me, or at least one of them. Like, I'm not saying I would have cried, but I would have definitely shed a couple thug tears. Just a couple strong tears. Think about Denzel Washington in the movie Glory. That would have been me. So image number three definitely might be one of my favorites. Actually, I know it's my favorite. So this is a clone shot, and I've done clone shots before. When I first got into photography, I thought they were really cool because I had just never seen it and I really wanted to try it. So I did a version myself long time ago. I'll find an image and add it in right here. So coming back and doing another one was a must. So my method of doing a clone shot is to put the camera on a tripod so the camera is never moving. That way, no matter what the subject is doing, the camera is in the exact same spot. Once I have the camera stable and I have my exposure and all my settings correct, then the next thing after that is to move my subject. So I try to think about the placement of my subject later so no one is overcrowding. As you can see, I'm moving her in different spots so that when I do clone it, it's not covering her up. So the version of her in the middle won't collide with the version of her on the left-hand side. When I move her to the right, it won't be in the way. But as you can see, nothing else is moving except for her. And then we're doing some action shots as well. The stylist told us not to hit the ball with the racket, so we had to just make an illusion of it. So we did a lot of attempts to just, do these fake swipes. They don't have to be perfect. They need to be believable. So we were definitely doing a lot of mock versions of those. So I'm moving her to the right side of the shot, and we're just doing the same thing. I'll add my camera settings at the end, but this is essentially the whole method. We just continue doing that over and over and over again. The last shot in this series was another clone shot, but instead of the model being cloned, we cloned the tennis balls. Or maybe there's another word for it, but I just called it cloning or the ball drop shot. So, and this is not like a new concept. I'm not going to claim that, oh, I'm the first person to ever drop tennis balls on a shot. But I love the way that we did it. I love our version of it. So what I did was similar to how I did the clone shot. I put the camera in one spot and then I dropped a bunch of tennis balls over and over and over again. And then in Photoshop, I was able to choose which tennis balls I wanted to be where from which shot. Now that took a lot of time in masking, but we're gonna get to that point in a second. But as you can see right here, very simple. Boom, drop the balls, take the pictures, look at the pictures, and then we do it again. And then like on the other ones, I'll add my camera settings towards the end of this as we transition to the second part. Now, the other thing too was I'm grateful that the sun did not move because that meant I keep the reflector in the same spot. The lighting is consistent per image, and I didn't have to do a ton of crazy adjustments because everything was just merging together. The only thing I had to do was make sure I masked out those tennis balls and then obviously get the timing for it. But if you're ever going to do this, be patient. Everybody on set, just be patient. It's worth it in the end. Welcome to the wonderful world of Capture One. So this is where I do all my raw processing. I don't use Lightroom, even though I teach people with it, because I know some people don't want to use Capture One. But for my work, I use Capture One every single time. One of the main things I did for this session was just really correcting the white balance. I was rushing to get everything set up because we were on a time crunch. So, doing the whole process of getting the white balance wasn't like a big priority at the time. I knew I could come in here and just click on this tool, pick the white balance tool, and find a neutral spot within the image. And I will get the white balance right. Matter of fact, let me just reset it so you guys can see how bad it was. And then I'm gonna click here and get what I want. And then everything else was just making small adjustments to the exposure when needed to just make sure the images look fluid throughout. So for this one, I believe I just boosted my shadows a little bit because I didn't want to lose all that detail I was losing here. And also, this was the only image where I used strobes. So it was super windy that day. I was rushing. I was being impatient. And I almost lost one of my Profoto B1Xs. My assistant was getting something else set up. I had sandbags and none of that was happening. I was just trying to rush and almost lost it. So once that happened, I put the strobes up because I was not going to go through that process, even though this is beautiful to me. I love this lighting, but I knew it was just not going to work. It was way too windy. So let's move on to the next image. This was, let's reset it. This was the image straight out of the camera. As you can see, it's a bit too bright here. We press exposure warning. You can see it's way too bright here. So bring down the whites to save that. Let's adjust the white balance by finding something neutral. 49 is, yeah, 51, 52 is pretty good. That's good. So that's saved. Let's see what I actually chose. Yeah, I made it a little bit darker. So the other reason I do that too is I'm really big on preserving the skin tone and the skin texture. So the best way for me to do that, and you can use this as well, is to underexpose the shot a little bit. So I'll make everything a little bit darker just to make sure we don't lose that detail. And you can see I did that through most of these shots. I was dealing with the sun moving back and forth between the clouds. There will be times when the shots will be really bright. There are times when it'll be low contrast because of the shade. And I had to make those adjustments. As you can see, going from something like this to here, yeah, lighting is completely different. But you got to balance that out. Luckily, had a reflector there, so you can still get some type of like piercingness or that, what's the word I'm looking for? That specularity in the subject with the reflector. And then these shots I made black and white. I made these black and whites because the rule that I was taught, or at least the rule that I operate on, is if the colors or an object or anything in the background is not helping your shot, make it black and white. It takes your eye away from that and keeps your eye on your subject. And in these shots, I think it worked out well. Let's turn the exposure thing off. I don't care about blowing out the details here because it's not important that you're seeing clouds. Like in this one, you can see it, but let's say on this one, if I pull the shadows back, it does make it more dramatic and such, but it isn't really changing the game. I prefer it this way. In this shot, I like the clouds a lot better, but in that one, I didn't. Let's move on. Here, just switching the white balance, making a couple of small adjustments here and there, but nothing too crazy. So it's just moving the contrast up a little bit, boosting the shadows, dropping the whites. There's no like major adjustments. Even if you look here, you're not seeing any additional layers or anything. And this comes from one, just understanding my camera and my gear, having a style that I've been doing for 14 years and knowing the limitations of what I'm operating with. So this was the shot straight out of camera. This is the shot with it corrected. The only thing I did was bring down the brightness to add a little more contrast to it and make sure that I'm not losing any of the detail in the fabric of what the model is wearing. And these are the clone shots. So again, for this one, I kept the camera in the same spot. The only changes that I made was to my camera settings, as you can see in these bottom row. As you can see on this bottom row, that's a better way of saying it. 1/640 for the shutter speed, f4. And I was shooting that fast to make up for the fact that the sun was, this was the overcast period. So I wanted to make this shot a little bit brighter, but also I needed to make sure she wasn't blurry when she did any type of tennis move. So that's why my shutter speed is at 1/640. Up here, she wasn't moving as fast. And even in the shot, I probably should have had a faster shutter speed so that this was clearer, because that racket does look a little bit blurry. But overall, I knew that wasn't going to be like a huge image or a huge part of the image. So it wasn't like a detail that was going to discourage me too much. But I also shot it at f8. So I shot it at f8 because I'm shooting against a background that's consistent. The rule that I operate on is if the background is consistent and it's helping the shot, then you want to show that detail. So I shot it at f8. I learned early on that shooting at a 2.8 for every single thing is not the way to go. You don't need to blur everything. Like your cameras are very expensive. Your lenses are expensive. Why shoot at one setting for everything? And then we go to the clone shots, or I guess a version of the clone shots. The ball drop shot is what I named it. But for these, the shutter speed is 1/640 so that we could freeze the tennis balls as they're bouncing or dropping down. And then also my aperture is at a 3.5 because I actually don't really care about seeing the detail in the background. Yes, it's consistent, but it's not something that like is pertinent to what's going on. But it's close enough to where you can still see exactly what it is. And also dropping my aperture down helps with exposure to get that right, because I wasn't using any strobes. This was all using a reflector. So it's just completely natural light. The sun is hitting her from back here, and then the reflector is bouncing the light back that way. So from here, and then the reflector hits it. It's a 6-foot reflector, bounces everything back into her eyes. And that's what I did in Capture One. Let's move over to Photoshop. Photoshop is where I was able to take these photos to the next level. So let's start with the clone shot, because this is everyone's favorite so far. I created a base layer. So I basically took one of the images and just removed the model because I needed something just to work on. And again, I hate the fact that this was so wide, but whatever. Focus, Dion. The first thing I did was, after I got rid of her, I changed the background here. So I went up to a program called Exposure. If we go to Filter, Exposure X6, and there's a preset they already have in there that kind of fix these colors a little bit. The goal there was just to change the overall feel and tonality of what was going on, because I knew I was going to eventually change it anyway, but I needed to at least just get rid of this, because this was just too bland for me. That felt a lot better. And then from there, play with the settings a little bit, and then I got this gradient map. So the gradient map had everything to do with trying to get this to look like clay, or at least the color of a clay court. I know that's too harsh, but this is what I ended up doing. Then from there, it was a matter of selecting the model out of each shot. So what I did was I went through and tested a bunch of them. So let's just pull up the various ones that I tested. And then I'm playing around with them like, okay, I don't like this one, don't like that one. So what I ended up doing was choosing, let's see, I know that one was kept because we got rid of the shadow. This one was kept. And then that one. And so you guys can see there's no shadow there. So what I did was I actually got the shadow from the original image, but just the actual shadow part. So no color from the image, just the actual shadow. So it's just tonality. I'm sorry, it's just luminosity. So it's just the black and white version of it. The shadows are what really sell this shot. It sells the effect. So if you don't have the shadows from your clones, this does not work. Okay, you have to have those shadows. So I did it for each one of those, got those three together, and then I made sure I made the adjustments here as far as cleaning up the skin, making some basic adjustments to make sure all the colors match well as far as her skin complexion. And then from there, went through finger separation again to fix her jawline because it was very harsh. So once she had told me that she was kind of rushing through the makeup on her way there. You know, typically I have a makeup artist on set, but in this one we didn't. Some of this was just rushed, but we did a great job. Like, I'm very, very proud of us for the fact that we were rushing and still got things to this point. She let me know that she wanted me to clean that up a little more, so I took that into a frequency separation, fixed that, and then I played with the colors a little bit from there. So I made some variations of it. So let's start with the original, what it just cleaned up with the colors that I liked. Add a little more contrast there, a lot of contrast. Take away some of that contrast because it was a little too harsh. And then we're good to go. So here you can see I pulled up the blacks because in this levels, I brought the blacks really far over to the right. So I needed to adjust those a little bit. And the curves adjustment tool made it just a little bit easier for me to do that. But that's the clone shot. I don't even know what this is. What is this? What was the darkener? I feel like probably darkening something on her face or something. But yeah, so how you select your subject is going to matter a lot. I actually went through each one of these and like cleaned up everything around the hair. I made sure I selected every single piece of these, especially around the shoes. The shoes were giving me a little bit of issues, but I was able to figure it out. So moving on to the second image. So I'm not gonna do all the images because it's the same process for most of these. But for the ones with the court, it was just a matter of cleaning things up. And then fixing the color. I know it looks like, oh, there's just two steps. So let's just go through each one. So yeah, I wanted to just brighten everything up. The second one was actually accessing the greens. So that's what was happening here. I feel like I made some other choices. There you go. So it was here. So this one, if we take it off, I was accessing those greens and shifting the colors a little bit. Once I shifted them, I need to add more contrast back in. So let's go to that layer. The only thing I did was come here and move that over to the right. So if you take this middle icon, I don't know what to call it, a dial, whatever you're going to call it, this little icon, as you move it to the right, it's actually going to make the image darker. Because what you're doing is you're taking these tones and shifting them towards the right. So as you move, it seems counterintuitive, but as you move this to the right, it's actually going to make the image dark. And as you move it to the left, it's going to make it brighter. So I moved it over to the right to make it a little bit darker, add a little more contrast. And so then we're going to go over here to the color balance tool. So let's start. So then we're going to go to the color balance tool. And as you can see in the mid-tones, I added a little more red, added a little more yellow because it felt like it was too cool. And then the magic change for that background. So this gradient map, what it does is it takes this part of the image and this part of the image and matches the colors. Now that doesn't make sense, right? That's not a good explanation. A better explanation. So on the left-hand side, this is going to be the darker parts of your image. On the right-hand side, it's going to be the brighter parts of your image. What gradient map does is you tell it what colors to put where. So if I change this color from black and I make it into red, anything that was that dark is not going to become that color. So no matter what color I choose, it's only going to go to the darker parts of the image because this is the darker part of the image. If we go over here, this is the brighter part of your image. So whatever color you change this to will be that color, but only the bright parts. You see, it's not affecting the darker parts of the image, but only the bright parts. So let's cancel that. Now, if you do this same thing for the middle, this is going to take the middle tones. So the brightest parts of the image are going to still stay white. The darker parts are still going to stay black, but everything else in the middle is going to go towards this color. So that's what happened here with the court. It took everything else and made it that color, which was exactly what I wanted. It made it look like it was a clay court. Then from there, work with selective color again, because I still want to shift things a little bit. I'm pretty sure, yep, it was in the neutrals. I wanted to take some of the cyan out a little bit more, take some of the magenta out to get that effect because I was seeing too much of it on her face. She's still a little too much magenta there. So that's why I use that selective color. And then this hue saturation layer. Yeah. So that hue saturation layer got rid of the blues. See, I took all the saturation out of blue for that one. And then color harmony as well. So color harmony added another gradient map. This gradient map was a little unconventional for me, but it worked really well. Infinite harmony is an amazing tool. So we're gonna keep going through the file, making more and more changes, because I made a black and white version as well for her because I just love black and whites, and I added this gritty feel to it so it kind of matched the vintage vibes that are going on, and a little more dodging and burning to fix the makeup on her face. Last thing we're gonna go through is the ball drop shot. So this one was similar to the clone shot in the sense of how it was set up, but it was very straightforward. Like once I clean up her skin, it was just a matter of aligning the tennis balls where I wanted them and masking them out, and then changing the color of the court. Very simple. So these are all of the mask balls. I chose which ones I wanted, got rid of some of them I didn't, and came up with this. The other thing I did do as well is I got rid of that blue in the background because that blue does not help the shot at all. And then fix the color of the ground. That was pretty much the thing. That was it. No, I brightened up her face a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The rest of these layers were me playing around with some other stuff, but it didn't always work out. And I did make a black and white version as well. But that was pretty much it. Again, very straightforward. Not a crazy amount of like tricks and stuff. The main thing was just making sure I had a good selection of the tennis balls. So very happy with these shots. If you guys have any questions, concerns, thoughts, make sure you leave them below in the comment section. I like to interact with you guys. I like to answer questions. Like I really enjoy teaching. And then if you guys have not liked or subscribed, please do that as well. The more you guys do that, it encourages the algorithm and YouTube and everybody else to come see more of these videos. And also it lets me know that I'm making the kind of content that you guys like. I'm not making this for me. I'm making this to help other photographers, to help, everyone else grow and help, just encourage you to pursue your dreams. So I will see you guys in the next one. And before I leave, I know we're working for the clients. We're in 2025 and, we have a lot of goals to, build our business and do X, Y, and Z. But make sure that you guys are doing things that are for you as well. Create for yourselves. See you in the next video. Peace.